Hi, I'm Breanne Anderson, Youth Services Librarian here at the Ames Public Library, and welcome to Well Read. You'll notice I'm not Jerry sitting in the chair today. She had to leave the library for a little bit, so I'm stepping in because we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Derek Anderson, local hero and author and illustrator. Wonderful, wonderful. Very excited to have you back
Thank you.
with us today, back in Ames.
Thanks.
So I know one of the main reasons, other than family, that you come back to Ames in the promotional circuit pretty often is when you have new books out. And we have Waking Dragons with us today. Tell us about it.
Oh, I'm so excited about this book. This just came out October 23rd, and this is the Year of the Dragon on the Chinese calendar, which, if you know anything about that, it only comes around once every 12 years. We didn't plan that.
I was just going to say, did you do that on purpose?
No, we had no idea, because I actually have to finish a book more than a year before it comes out, and no one knew it. And one day I called my editor. I was just doing some research one day and discovered this Year of the Dragon, and I said, "Did you know about that?" And she said, "No." So we were really excited. This is a book written by Jane Yolen. Everyone that knows her books, she did How Do Dinosaurs Say Goodnight. Actually, she's done hundreds of books, and she's such a talented writer. She's really, really good at spare texts, where this is a poem, and the words are so lyrical and it's so fun. They just bounce off the page. And when they sent me the story for this, I read it once, and I knew I had to do it. So I get to do the illustrations, and I'm really pleased with how it came out.
So how does that work? Because when I read it, that was my first thought is, wow, there's not much here. Derek really had to say a lot in the pictures, and he really had to explain a lot, like to fill in, because there's not a lot of words. How is that process? How do you do that?
One of the things that I do, and it's a hard thing to explain, but an illustrator doesn't necessarily illustrate the words of the author. We complement their words with illustrations. And so my job is to kind of look in between the words and discover the world that exists there. And that's what I had to do with Waking Dragons. When it starts out, it's the first line of the poem is "Dragons wake up." And so I had to figure out how to introduce a story a little bit before that. And I ended up doing it. I brought a little note in from his mother about how he has to wake the dragons before school. And that kind of sets up a little timeline. He's on a deadline. He's got to get to school, but he's got to get these dragons up and moving before he can get to school. And so, like when the text is so spare that way, it's up to the illustrations to kind of create a visual narrative to go along with that. And it's tricky. It takes a lot of time, and it was so much fun to do. It's because I get to discover the world that exists there.
You really have to build the world. I mean, you really have to create. When Jane wrote this, she probably had an idea of what she wanted. Like, does she kind of give you direction on that, or is that part of the illustrator's thing, is to create the world?
I think that most people think that authors and illustrators work together, and the truth is we don't really work together at all. In fact, we don't even talk. We work with an editor. So this book is published by Simon & Schuster Books for Young Readers. So our editor is Alexandra Cooper, and so we both worked with Alexandra. So Jane sent her story to Alexandra, and then Alexandra asked me if I would be interested in illustrating it. I don't work with Jane, I work with Alexandra, and then our designer, Chloe, who's fantastic. You can see the titles and things on the book. She is in charge of all that, and designing and laying it out with my illustrations, all the type that you see in the book. And it's so much fun to discover that world and to be free to take it anywhere it can go. And I think that's the illustrator's job, is really to go play in the imagination and try to find characters and the world. I could have set this anywhere. I could have set it in modern day in Ames or in Minneapolis, where I live now, or anywhere. But it really felt like home should be in a castle, maybe in a medieval world where dragons actually might exist, and having a little boy be our main character. And he just happens to wear a knight outfit, and I had a blast.
Kind of have to when you're working with dragons.
Exactly.
I mean, if you get blasted, you have to have some kind of protection, right? I mean, yes. It was very cute. Like the bedposts have the castle turrets on it and stuff like that. I mean, like all of those little details really help to build that world, and it's fantastic.
Thanks. I was so pleased when a reviewer recognized that it has cinematic qualities, and I approach books the way movies, that visual language and visual storytelling that movies use. And so I know when to use an establishing shot, and I know when to go in for a close-up. And I love that. I feel like these play out like movies, and I really tried to show different angles and bring in those details.
Yes, it's very cool. So you mentioned the design and stuff like that. On your blog, you mentioned that the cover changed from what you originally had it as and stuff like that. Is that kind of frustrating to you as an author, or as an illustrator, if you have something and you pour your heart and soul into it and then they want to change it or they want to do something, or is that just part of the challenge of?
I mean, it's always challenging when someone tells you that your idea isn't quite there yet, but that's the editor's job and the art director. What they do is they push me to. They want to get the best book out of me that they can get. And so I come up with initial ideas, and I work very hard to get to those ideas. And their job is to take those ideas and say, but couldn't it be pushed even a little further? And sometimes they love what I send in, and sometimes they want to just push little aspects of it. And I work with great editors and great art directors, and they do such a good job of choosing the right moments to push. And in the case of the cover, I loved the idea of having the dragon not shown from the very start. When you look at the cover, it's a little bit mysterious because the dragon's underneath the blankets. They're thinking, and they were getting a lot of feedback from people at the publisher, that they really wanted to see the dragon on the cover. And before, the actual cover looked more like this illustration right here, where the boy is reaching out to the nose of the dragon. And they said, we really want to see the dragon on the cover. We really want to see the boy's interaction. And I was hesitant at first, and obviously, because we were all finished with the book, but when I started doing sketches and started getting this interaction between the boy and the dragon and them gazing at each other, I realized that they were right. And that's their job. Their job is to push me. And I have to try all the different possibilities before I can know that I've got the right one. So while it can be frustrating to have to change something sometimes you just have to realize that that's their job.
That's what they're good at.
And they're very good at it.
Yeah. So this is you as an illustrator working with somebody else's words. You have also written books where, like Story County, where you illustrate and write at the same time. So do you still have, are they still giving you suggestions and stuff in that kind of case too? And like which part do you like better? Do you like working with somebody, or do you like doing your own thing?
It's funny. So I was asked years ago by my editor, she said, so do you think of yourself as an author or as an illustrator? And I told her, I'm a storyteller. I love stories, and so whether I'm illustrating another author's story or whether I'm illustrating my own, I love the approach that we get to take telling stories. And I still have a lot of work to do when I'm illustrating another author's words, because I have to create the visual world that goes along with their language. And the same thing when I'm working on my own. Sometimes I have to pull back on the text, or sometimes I have to push the illustrations, or vice versa. And so there are definitely advantages to doing both, and I never want to say, oh, I'll never illustrate another author's words just because I write. I love that I never would have come up with Waking Dragons. Like, that was just something that Jane came up with, and it was very special. And I have my own approach to writing and telling stories, and which is always changing, so I can't say I would never come up with that. But that's that particular author's approach to that world, and I loved it so much. It was so clever and so special, and that's what I love about being able to illustrate other authors' words. And I get offered stories that I don't end up illustrating. Editors will send things to me, and they don't feel right. I don't connect with the story in a way, or I don't know what to do with it. And that's okay. You know, I love being offered all kinds of different things.
That's cool. So Waking Dragons, the characters and stuff are very fantasy oriented. I mean, the dragons and the stuff like that, where most of your work previously has been realistic characters. Cows, pigs, ducks, that kind of thing. How was it to work on more of a fantasy kind of thing?
It was an interesting situation because I'm not a nonfiction guy. Like, I'm not doing nonfiction books. And I was asked years ago by one of my publishers. They said, "What about a nonfiction book? What would you think of that?" And I thought a bit about it, and I said, you know what? If I went into a bookstore and there was a book about bears, real bears, and there was a book of Winnie the Pooh next to it, I will pick Winnie the Pooh every day of the week and twice on Tuesday. You know, it's a funny thing, and I love the idea of doing all kinds of different characters. But with dragons, there have never been real dragons, and so it was challenging because to do research, I could only look at how other artists have interpreted that animal, that whatever you want to call it, that creature. And so I had to look at all the different characteristics. Should they have ears? Should they have horns? Should they be huge or small? And I, you know, it's a discovery thing in the sketchbook. Like it's going at it for, you know, weeks and sometimes months of trying all kinds of different things, drawing them with larger snouts and big teeth, or, you know, huge wings or little tiny wings. And you know, there are absolutely no limitations. That's the great thing about working out of the imagination. I can do anything I want. And once I discovered kind of what dragons really look like, and I love the idea that they breathe fire, so I wanted to bring that in. And then it was finding the characters that are mine that don't look like anyone else's.
Yeah, putting that little touch on it that's
and that's
signature thing, and that's Derek Anderson, you know?
Exactly. It's kind of a total discovery thing. Like, I always think of my characters in some ways that they already exist, and I'm just out there trying to find them. They're kind of out floating in the air somewhere, and I know that if I stick with it long enough, they're kind of going to come along. And I'm pretty tough. It's tough on my character designs. Like, I want them to stand up on the page and start speaking to me, and that's when I know I've got my character.
I love your blog because you'll put some of those early sketches on there. And, like, this is gorgeous, but for those of us who are artistically challenged, like, appreciating how much work went into that. So seeing some of those, like, early sketches and stuff that you've done and how you got to these characters, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I love to post those things. And my blog is it's on my website, derekanderson.net. And I love to post those things because it does show, especially to kids, that these things I don't sit down and just draw a dragon and I've got my character.
With color and with all this stuff that's going on,
No, I can draw them hundreds of times, and I do paintings that never appear in the books. They're paintings for me to start to experiment with color and figure out what these characters should look like and what colors they should actually be. Should the dragons have alligator bellies, you know, like a lot of people have done? I decided that they shouldn't. I decided that my dragons wouldn't. They'll have a lighter colored belly, but not necessarily all the little
scales and segments and
whatever you call those. So it's that, and that's an experimentation and an exploration to find those characteristics that I feel my characters should have.
It's, as an audience, it's nice to be able to see that, to be able to see the creative process that goes into it, because it's fascinating. And like you said, for the kids and stuff like that, I mean, when you were young and seeing that and reading books and your creativity and stuff, so having an idea into that process, you had a direction to go. It's pretty cool. So our library, as many of our audience know, is in the process of completely moving. Closed down for a while we move everything out to a temporary location. We're very lucky to have a renovation project going on now. Lots of people are coming in and seeing the changes and talking about memories and stuff that they've had from the library. What are some, I know the library has been very influential in your life as you've been growing up and discovering your talents and stuff. What are some of your memories from the library world?
The Ames Public Library was the first place that I ever saw a real live author. And I was one of those kids that I never wanted to be an author or illustrator growing up. And because I didn't know that was a possibility. Like, I really did believe that authors and illustrators were put on this world to make books. Like, I thought they lived in castles and far-off lands and had dragons as pets. Nice. And early on, you have those fantastic ideas. And I did meet an author at the Ames Public Library. I don't remember how old I was. And I was pretty young, and the thing that I was actually, I hate to say this, but I was a little disappointed because she wasn't wearing magical shoes, you know, and it was so funny. And yeah, it's heartbreaking, and it's one of those things where I never want to burst a child's bubble about that we're not magical or something, because I do think that imagination is like a superpower, and you just have to look at it that way and realize that we have terrific abilities to conjure things, and children already have that ability. Like so it's not necessarily magical to them. It's not until you maybe get a little older and realize it is kind of magic at its best, and to be able to create characters out of shapes and be able to create worlds. And so anyway, at the Ames Public Library, I met this author, and I think that's the first time where I actually realized that she has parents, and she has a husband, and and probably children, and drives a car and lives in a house just like I do. And maybe that was the first time that I realized that that's something that a person does. You know, they're not put here to do that. And it still took me a long time to realize that was what I wanted to do, to make books. But I knew early on I was going to tell stories with words and pictures. But the Ames Public Library, I've been coming here for as long as I can remember. So this is a very special place to me. I'm excited that you guys are doing renovations. It's changed a lot since I was a kid. It's great that you guys keep updating and staying with the times. Books are exciting things.
They are.
And you know, you get to escape into a world. And I think that we need to make sure that stays important to the next generation and to kids in the Ames community and surrounding communities, and they keep coming back. Because I want them to have the same experiences that I had, and whether I have magical shoes or not,
I think kids see the magic in you because you're so passionate about this. I mean, it's really evident to everybody who talks to you and sees you speak and stuff that you love what you do. And I think that is magic in itself, because not everybody can say that. So seeing that passion and seeing that enthusiasm for what you do, I think that really comes across to the kids. So we are all
Thank you, I appreciate that.
We are all very enthusiastic for Waking Dragons, but we are also very enthusiastic for any future plans that you have. Do you have other things coming out soon or something that we can look forward to?
I have a new book I'm working on. I can't, the title keeps changing, so I don't even have a title. It's another in the series of Hot Rod Hamster. So we've done two of those now, and this book will come out in spring 2014. It's not quite finished yet. I'll finish it in December, and as I said, I have to finish a book a year before it comes out. So they're looking at spring 2014. So I'll be back in Ames for sure when that book comes out.
Well, we definitely look forward to talking with you then and seeing everything that you do in the future. Thank you very much for sitting down and talking with us about Waking Dragons and your creative process and stuff like that. It's always a joy to have you here. This has been another episode of Well Read. We definitely look forward to having Jerry back next time, but it's been a pleasure to be able to sit in for her today. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.